Manchester United won, West Ham won. A disappointing result for the Red Devils, but still 13 points out of 15 for Michael Carrick. So what are some of the tactical lessons that we can draw from this setback? Without further ado, let's analyze. Alright, so let's get started with this tactical analysis video. And this particular video will start on a critical note, but then it's going to end on an uplifting one. But I believe that we definitely need to talk about areas of improvement in this Michael Carrick system. But one thing that is absolutely undeniable, it is the fact that the Manchester United fans have absolutely enjoyed watching football again. Watching Manchester United, the football has been exciting, scintillating in some phases of play. And a lot of it is due to this Michael Carrick in possession shape. I've asked you guys, my community on both X and YouTube community note, what you guys think is different in our in possession shape under Michael Carrick. Your contributions will be added to a future video that I intend on making just on this shape right here. If you want to see that video, please let me know in the comment section below. But basically, what Michael Carrick wants to do is build up in a 3-2 shape with the two double pivot, Casemiro and Mainu, Dalot acting as a right-sided centre-back. And then you have the likes of Mbeumo, Bruno and Cunha who like to operate in these half spaces. This actually provides a lot of opportunities for triangles, for vertical play, and it kind of enable us to move seamlessly between the build-up, the progression, and then penetration into the final the final third phases, okay? So all of this means that Manchester United are extremely dangerous through the middle of the park, which is actually the area where you want to be dangerous because that's where you can create the highest, the chances with the highest chance of scoring. But of course, the question remains, how do you defend against such a shape? And I think that West Ham have pretty much answered this question in this game, and that's what we're going to talk about next. So pretty much this West Ham team has been absolutely great when it comes to compactness. They have not really allowed us plenty of spaces in the middle, and they've used a very simple yet effective strategy, which is to not overcommit and then to set a few pressing traps for Manchester United. And here are a few examples. For example, here, as you can see again, that build up with those 5 players from Manchester United. But then here, Bowen is just waiting 2 or 3 yards away from Mbeumo because they're trying to identify who is the likely recipient of the pass. And then once Mbeumo gets the ball, and then that's it, he's muscled out, and then West Ham are able to win the ball. Now you might think, okay, maybe I just saw this one sequence and then I used it to base the whole video on. No, this happens multiple times. In fact, there are so many sequences that I chose not to include in this video. Here's another one, for example, as you can see, Castellano, who was kind of like the one initiating the press here, but then as the ball moves towards the left-hand side with Licha, he's actually telling Souček to actually take over with the press. This effectively puts Mainu in a trap because now he's surrounded by 4 players. But as you can see here, they still want to make him seem like an attractive option. But then here, Matheus Fernandes, who has been absolutely great in this game. Again, I'm sure many of you have been watching him with binoculars and scouting him because I think he would be a great target for Manchester United. Again, he just pounces on Kobbie Mainu. So basically what they're trying to do is just set these pressing traps. In a way, what they are doing is to still allow certain advanced Manchester United players to look like viable options to receive the pass. But then the moment they do, you just attack them and you press them with intensity and win that ball. And in fact, that could have cost us the game. This was actually, again with Matheus Fernandes against Casemiro. But this sequence, especially here, Bruno again coming in, as you can see, the way they are set up is that they make Bruno seem like a no-brainer, pretty much. But no, this is actually extremely dangerous because the moment the pass comes to him, then Magasa is there to actually win the ball. And this actually, as you can see from the 90th minute, this actually has led into this opportunity, which should have been a goal if it were not for this Nesta-like defending from Lenioro, which was absolutely amazing. And he did not just do it once, he did it twice in the space of 1 minute. We could have lost this game if it was not for these 2 interventions by Lenioro. Just elite defending. That's the exact same, defending prowess that I think the Manchester United scouts have witnessed when they scouted him, and which has justified the 50 million or so that Manchester United has paid for him. But anyway, so in a nutshell, Manchester United, the reason why we did not look great and the football did not look as exciting in this game against West Ham is because of tactical reasons. Not necessarily on our part, but on West Ham's part. You cannot evaluate player performance in a vacuum. Like, what you want to do depends a lot, whether it succeeds or not, depends a lot on what the opposition does. You're not playing against, models that are just standing there. You're playing against an entity that is alive, that reacts to what you do, that studies you, that prepares for the game against you. And so I think we should be careful in these kind of situations not to fall under these intellectual, analysis, the likes that we've seen from the likes of Paul Scholes, for example. Oh, Lisandro Martinez, I could just carry him on my shoulders. No, there are tactical reasons that justify why Manchester United were not actually able to have as high an impact or control the game or play the game that they wanted against West Ham as they've done against the previous four opponents. But there's another issue that Manchester United has. I talked about this in my Spurs video. A few of you did not like that video because they thought that it was overly critical of Manchester United. I took a risk because Manchester United won 4 games in a row. We won 2-0 against Spurs. I should have just been positive in that video. But no, I wanted to keep it real. And here against West Ham, I'm not going to say, I told you so, because to me, it's just not my style. But it's a fact that our pressing structure under Michael Carrick is not really optimal. Actually, it's not just Michael Carrick. We've seen it against under Ruben Amorim as well as Erik ten Hag. But here, basically, what we have is Kobbie Mainoo joining the press with Ahmad and Bruno, pretty much who are trying to man-mark their goalkeeper and then 2 of their, one centre-back and then 1 defensive midfielder. But then the moment they move into their progression phase and they move towards these wide areas, effectively what happens is that they actually outnumber us 4-3. Which effectively puts Mateus Fernandes into that free electron, that extra man who they can find. And then here, Diouf actually highly underrated left back. He was absolutely excellent in this game, who just peels away for 2 or 3 yards to open up his body a little bit, open up his angle, so that with his left foot he can find Mateus Fernandes, who has moved, effectively just nullifying the whole Manchester United midfield line and having all of this space, and which now West Ham can actually use to progress the ball into the final third. By the way, that sequence ended with a header. Okay, so again, they were able to progress the ball and just beat our press. Here is another example. I simply did not understand this sequence. Bruno Fernandes is kind of the only one initiating the press. You should have had one other player. The whole point of initiating the press here is that you have one more player coming in on this guy and then another player coming in on this guy to kind of force them either to go back to their goalkeeper and move more towards the right-hand side or to go long. But we did not do any of this, and you're going to see why as the ball moves towards Malik Diouf. Again, as you can see, Cunha and Bruno are kind of outnumbered. But look at Amad Diallo. It was hard for me because of this card right here. I could not really show you how he was reacting, but basically he was lifting his arms, telling his teammates, guys, who is with this guy? Because now what we see with the West Ham midfield is that there are 3 midfielders, Soucek, Potts, and Mateus Fernandes, especially, who is literally hugging the touchline, have all shifted towards this left-hand side. So basically, they are creating an overload, numerical superiority right here, which our double pivot is struggling to deal with, 2 against 3. And so we needed at least one of our defenders, maybe Dalot, maybe Maguire, to actually move up a little bit in order to plug these spaces right here. But this was just extremely easy for West Ham to play through our press. So this lack of efficiency in how we use, our players in the way we press is actually what resulted in us conceding the goal. So obviously you've seen the goal, and I think that a lot of the focus has been on Luke Shaw, and rightly so. I think that was just an amateur mistake. You never let the ball rebound like that in front of you. You just attack it. Even kids, under 9s, they are told to do that by their coaches. So yeah, I'm not really going to talk about that as much. But what a lot of people did not notice is actually how inefficient our press in the sequence was. Because here, as you can see, we do have 3 Manchester United players marking 3 West Ham players. But there's this extra guy who is Casemiro. It could make a case either for Casemiro or Kobbie Mainoo. One of them should have been here on Soucek. This is extremely important. Why do we have 4 players against 3 West Ham players right here? One should have been on Soucek, because the moment Luke Shaw lost the ball, who collects it? Well, of course, it's Soucek. The players, the midfield players are too far away from Soucek, so we're not able to apply any pressure unless it's Luke Shaw, which actually frees up Bowen right there. And then even in the box, as Soucek gets ready to attack that near post, both Kobbie Mainoo and Casemiro are actually next to him, and yet none of them are able to mark him out and to stop him from, executing the finish, which we all knew was exactly what he was looking for. So again, as much as people are focused on Luke Shaw right here, and yes, he should have done better, This was a structural issue, and it's the same issue that I have highlighted against Spurs. Prior to the red card, Spurs were also able to play through us. They've done it 3-4 times using a variety of moves, not just one move. And, a lot of people brushed it aside as, well, maybe Michael Carrick wanted Spurs to actually build up on the left-hand side. No, it's just that we are not effective with the way we press. And sometimes if you play against opposition that is sharp, as was West Ham, I think West Ham are too good to get relegated, then you get punished, okay? Well, this is not the only thing, because there is another thing that you may have noticed, and it is that certain West Ham players, especially Somerville, looked absolutely amazing in this game. And here, the focus, I don't want it to be on West Ham per se, but I think that this is a great opportunity to talk about a tactical concept that, in my opinion, is extremely underrated. And it is the ability for teams through off-the-ball movement to actually isolate, create that isolation between their wingers and the opposition fullback. So here, as what we can see is this. There's this jigsaw move by the West Ham players. Malik Diouf actually pushing the line further deeper, and then Somerville just dropping deeper right here to collect the ball. Now, the moment he collects the ball, I like this. This is purely technical. So he's just given himself some space with those feints in order to force Diogo Dalot to just, step off a little bit in order to provide him with space. But now this is not over, because in this situation right here, it's still going to be hard for Somerville to actually go past Diogo Dalot, because Ahmad is kind of covering this space right here. He's effectively blocking his path to goal. So now, Diouf, who has been, again, absolutely amazing in this game, is going to make the move that most players do not know how to execute, which is now he's going to take Ahmad away with him. Therefore, now he's forcing Dalot into a 1v1 situation with Somerville, and then Somerville just starts dancing the tango or whatever, and then he completely obliterates Dalot. And Dalot, literally, I just praised him on my X account, and then he just delivers this performance right here where he got absolutely destroyed. But the reason why I'm including this sequence here is because at Manchester United, first of all, we do need to recruit more players who are great in these 1v1 situations. I think Ahmad is great. I think Cunha also is pretty good, but I think that we need more. I think Dorgu also is quite athletic, quite effective in these kind of situations, but we definitely need to recruit players who can do that. And then when we do that, we have to start creating a lot of isolation between those players and the opposition fullbacks in order to maximize their impacts and their potential. But anyway, enough of the negative stuff. It's not negative per se, it's areas of improvement, but I think we need to talk about some positives as well. Here, look, this is the sequence that has led to the Casemiro goal, which was ruled out. Look at Mateus Fernandes, who again had an amazing game. He's looking over his left shoulder, and he's gonna see something that's gonna creep the hell out of him, because now, for some reason, inexplicably, he's backing off Kobbie Mainoo. And this is actually a glitch in the system, because what he saw, what actually freaked him out is the fact that Malik Diouf was actually outnumbered by Ahmad and Bruno right here. And what this tells me, because every time I watch games, I try to identify evidence for what I'm saying. But what this tells me is that Nuno Espirito Santo, or their analysts or their assistant coaches or whoever is in charge of briefing the players on these tactical matters, definitely has kind of like stressed the fact that the West Ham midfielders have to always be wary of these half spaces, because Manchester United, as we've seen against Manchester City, against Arsenal, especially against Fulham, are quite potent and quite effective in these areas. So now this was kind of like an information overload kind of situation, because I think that when you give players too many instructions, it confuses the hell out of them. And then with players like Kobbie Mainoo, if you give them space with the quality that he has, he's going to be able to punish you. But the lesson here for Manchester United is exactly this. If we create a system where we have a plethora of avenues to the opposition, goal, then what this does is that it actually ends up confusing the opposition, because the opposition players are going to be overloaded with instructions, overloaded with information and details that they have to keep in mind, which inevitably is going to lead to them making mistakes and losing focus, which creates opportunities for us. So if you have a one-dimensional tactical system, then eventually the opposition adapts. But if your system is multi-dimensional, then it makes it harder for the opposition. That's actually what makes a team like Arsenal and their Arteta quite dangerous, is because they play well a variety of ways and they have a variety of avenues towards goal. But anyway, that's definitely something that we need to keep in mind. Speaking of avenues to goal, is this set pieces. Obviously, against Spurs, we scored an amazing set piece. And then here, we could have won the game because, in my opinion, at the 21st minute, had we scored this goal, we would have kind of forced West Ham out of their shell. They would not have been as compact as they were throughout the game. Therefore, that would have opened up space for us that we would have exploited. But then again, this kind of like is music to my ears because Manchester United have moved away from just hoofing the ball into the box in set pieces and just hoping for the best. But now we play with more method. We have set piece routines, a variety of them actually, and we try to use them, effectively in games, and that's absolutely great. And then the last thing, of course, is the Sesko goal. Not only because it was, a huge adrenaline rush, but also because of this. I think that Sesko's movement in and around the box is absolutely underrated because here what he does is that he just starts walking back as if he's not really interested by what's happening around him. But what this does, that it literally allows the whole defensive line, the West Ham defensive line, to move 2 or 3 yards deeper. This actually opens up this space right here because what a lot of players don't understand is that you don't have to fill every space. When there is space, that means that you have space to attack. So you need to create that space between you and the defenders. And that's exactly what Sesko has done. Credit to Mbemu, that was a beautiful cross. And then Sesko, that's a beautiful Berbatov-like finish because it was not powerful, but it was extremely well placed. All right, so before I let you go, I have to talk about my previous video, the analysis against Spurs, a video which some of you thought was a little bit too critical of Michael Carrick. In fact, some have accused me of having an agenda against Michael Carrick. First of all, guys, if you're new to this channel, maybe you would think that, but if you've been watching this channel for at least 6 months right now, you know that if I am to be accused of anything, it is the fact that I am sometimes too optimistic, about Manchester United. I'm sure that the real ones among you still remember my ice cube analogy. I had to make that video. I had to be critical. Like I said earlier, I took a risk because we won 4 games in a row, so I went a little bit against the grain. But because I've already kind of noticed that this Michael Carrick system was not really sustainable, in that it worked well against Manchester City and Arsenal because it was kind of designed to counter them. But then against Fulham and against Spurs, certain issues started emerging. Certain issues with how we use the ball as well as how we pressed. If we press in a compact 4-4-2 shape, we're fine, we're safe, we do it well. If we try to press with intensity, proactively, then actually we leave ourselves open. And then it was just a matter of time before there was going to be a team that was going to be able to punish us. Fulham were quite close, and then maybe Spurs, had they not had a red card, maybe things would have been differently. And then now again against West Ham. It's in that spirit. And that spirit is that we always need to look at ways to improve, and we should never get too complacent. Even in my full-time job, I do have a 9-to-5 job. Scarlet Report is just my hobby, my passion. But every time I receive, my appraisal email from my employer, usually I just skim read through, the part that talks about the great stuff about me as, a team member. But I focus more on the key areas of improvement because to me, that is more valuable. To me, that is more relevant to how I grow as a professional. And the same thing applies when it comes to tactics. It's the same thing that applies when it comes to parenting. You're not just going to shield and cuddle your kids all the time, but sometimes you have to expose them to the world. You have to expose them to the hardship that they're going to face as adults. And so it's the same thing. So anyway, guys, I hope that you've enjoyed this tactical analysis video. If you did, please let me know in the comment section below. Also, if you have any input on how Michael Carrick's system could evolve in the future in order to avoid the pitfalls that I have highlighted, please also make sure that you share them with us and give the video the thumbs up, as well as hype it up, hit that hype button. Until next time, cheers.